And welcome to this morning's edition of Friday edition of Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff DeForest, going to be joined here in short order by the professor. He's got a big board that involves a very serious gambling angle. Although I had received my share of criticism saying that it was sort of cruel and unusual, very macabre, very draconian, that I was involved for many years in various Deadpools. I know people out there probably partake in it. I don't know if you do so proudly. I was never able to cash. It always seemed like just before whoever I had drawn for that particular period of time would check out. My eligibility to a cash on that proposition would expire, and then 2 days later, the guy would check out, and somebody else would win the pool. We'll get into a little bit of that with the professor, but there are other things that the professor is involved in, including this one, and we were discussing this a little bit earlier this morning on another program, and that is I love coach speak. And I'm thinking, how is this possible? This Sharon Moore comes out yesterday, coach of the Michigan Wolverines, and he tries to imply to people. And I don't know how heavy the follow up questions were to this. That Bryce Underwood, who they supposedly are paying $12 million to come in, they lured him away from LSU. Is actually in an open competition for the starting quarterback job with some guy named Mikey Keene, who I don't know much about. I guess he was a transfer from one of the Western schools like San Jose State or something. I'm not sure exactly where he went. And that this guy Underwood, I mean, what are the odds, Professor, that Underwood will not be the starter for Michigan on opening day? How are you, by the way?
Uh, I've been trying to do the odds in my head. Um, uh, by the way, Mikey Keene, you should have remember was UCF.
UCF, okay.
And then transferred to Fresno State.
Fresno State.
So he's well traveled. But he was UCF starter. Oh God, 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, he's another one of these COVID kids who's been in college. It seems like for 9 years. So
Yeah.
yeah. It's odds from what I'm heard from Michigan people, both publicly and a couple of times, like we're looking. I would say 3% Bryce Underwood will not start on opening day. I mean,
He would be hit by a truck, wouldn't he?
basically, and it's really not a pay issue. It's that he is phenomenally talented, and people love his arm and his athletic ability. It's not necessarily look. I don't know the exact total of what Arch Manning has made sitting on the bench in Texas for a couple of years, but it has to be well into the tens of millions of dollars. And Sark has had no problem keeping him on the bench other than injury games that whole time. So I don't think it's an economic issue. I just think it's a talent issue.
All right, you follow these kind of things, and it's going to be a constant narrative and storyline throughout.
By the way, Mikey Keene's not bad. He throws too many picks. Really. Otherwise, he's a pretty good QB, but he does turn the ball over too much.
I mean, if I'm one of the Michigan boosters, it's part of that $12 million jackpot that this kid was cashing, and the guy doesn't end up starting.
I mean, as I understand, like 99% of that is Larry Ellison and his wife, who obviously have more money to throw away than the. I mean, that's like their tip money, $12 million. So, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
All right, you follow these kind of things. Does this new Trump edict, executive order, it seemed to fall in line with what the NCAA was looking to do? Are they ever going to be able to get a handle on what's going on, the Wild West nature of NIL and college payments these days? Or is it probably more out of whack than it was when everything was done under the table?
Okay, as far as I know, and I do not necessarily, if there's been a new thing from the Trump government, I do not. The Trump edict was all about trans athletes, as far as my.
This involved payments to players.
Okay, then this is something I have not seen. It's going to come down to this this court ruling, the settlement of the class action suit between the NCAA and a bunch of former athletes over NIL rights, which they collectively bargained an agreement which put a severe cap, a significant cap, and was hit the next day, I believe, with a Title IX lawsuit by a bunch of female athletes because the numbers would just clobber. And I'm sure, I don't know if you saw this story this week, but the big update, and they're back at Miami. I didn't realize they were both now back at Miami. The Cavinder twins
Yes.
went out and announced that they had gotten a boob job.
Right.
So they were apparently planning for a
Now, was that
big
on a BOGO?
final year of NIL. So I know
I mean,
you go out
do you
to
do you
do
get
that.
four boobs for the price of two if you're twins? I mean, how does that work? Is that like the
I mean, it's South Florida. The market
buy
for
one, get one?
plastic surgery's got to be pretty competitive. So
Yes.
you might find the doctors out there. It's like, yeah, I'll do twins for the price of one.
They were fine without, this enhancement, but we'll see. Now, does that? I
I
mean,
mean, like
I don't want to get in trouble like Ben Wright did, but does that kind of impede their ability? Are they still playing basketball?
Yes, apparently they are still
What do they have?
playing
20 years
basketball
of
for
eligibility?
Miami.
Wow.
One of them transferred away to Miami to, I think it was TCU, and now it's transferred back
Yeah.
to Miami to join her sister, who was dating Carson Beck, and then they very publicly broke up. And yeah, it's pretty wild story there. But apparently determined to capitalize on their last year of NIL. I honestly, I have no idea how those two are still college eligible, but
They were already in the WWE. I mean,
I
holy Jim Thorpe. I mean, and they stripped this guy of all of his awards because he dabbled in professional sports. How times have changed. And this is, after all, Miami, Banana Republic. So it's very possible that they have exceeded their eligibility and still are playing.
Well,
And
as another SEC Media Days story, Arkansas has a freshman wide receiver who is something like 30 years old because he's been playing minor league baseball for 12 years.
yeah,
And I think made a roster at some point. I don't know if it was like a spring training roster, but like has actually played in the major leagues and has made, however much money playing minor league baseball. And, now has decided he wants to return to football. Like,
it's kind of like when Chris Wenke was 40 years old and
right.
still attending
And
Florida State and starting at quarterback. And it reminded me of when I was in the third grade at PS20 in Brooklyn, New York. And there were a couple of 20-year-old kids in the back of the classroom there. And they weren't just matriculating. I mean, they were just trying to get out of the third grade at that point. Yeah, so a lot of different stuff on the college front, of course, in terms of the way the sports are going to be administrated. Did you are you already ready to dive into some of these futures, or are you saving that for the
I mean,
ensuing?
we're going to talk about it on the show next week, although there is one that is sort of involved in our big board. And then we started talking with the Bryce Underwood. I was looking at the Michigan schedule. If Underwood is good, I think that 8.5 looks pretty tasty as an over
Wow.
for Michigan, who were way down last year. But it was all basically about the quarterback position and a pretty rough schedule at the beginning. This year, I think it's a little softer. Again, I like everybody's on this Big Ten train coming in. Well, now that we can pay players, we're right there with the SA. I don't know, as a league, I'd buy that. Obviously, Ohio State has been a talent factory over the years, and they will be, again, massively talented. A lot of people like Penn State. I recognize that, they got pretty far in the playoffs last year, but I have my doubts. I think that was a schedule issue last year. I don't buy into Drew Aller at all as a top college quarterback or a prospect. I'm sure they'll be good, but I don't view them as overwhelming. And then when you get past those two in the Big Ten, I'm not really sold on how tough the league is as a whole beyond those two. So I think Michigan could be in a very friendly situation and in terms of that 8.5 if Underwood can come in and upgrade their quarterback position. He certainly looks like, if nothing else, he will bring an athletic element to it that it lacked at times last year.
That is, if according to Sharon Moore, his chances aren't 50-50 of actually being the starter there in this wide open competition. All right. This involves betting. And I used to come under some scrutiny from friends of mine that thought it was despicable, disgusting, and almost Trump-esque that I was involved in these Deadpools. I never managed to hit one. A friend of mine a long time ago, a mutual friend, you know, the great Peter Leonard.
Yes, years ago. I remember this one. Peter Graves.
I'll never forget this because he calls me crying that he was in for, I think it was $100 a month, and he was in this thing for 15 months. So he had $1,500 invested in this, which to the average degenerate gambler may not seem like an excessive amount of money, but this guy doesn't gamble, and I'm sure he never anticipated putting this kind of scratch into the Deadpool that he had entered. So sure enough, he tells me, I can't believe it. I got to go make this payment again. I got 1,500 into this. I said, so who do you have? He says, I have Whitey Ford and Peter Graves. I said, all right, well, Whitey's up there in age. And I go to the track that day, and I run into a guy, and this guy owned a restaurant in town. His name was Johnny, and he owned a place, oddly enough, called Johnny's, which was very good, nice Italian restaurant out west. And he says, hey, you never believe what I just did. He's buying me a drink at the track. I said, what? Well, what's going on, Johnny? He says, I just played golf with Whitey Ford. So I said, well, how's he looking? He said, looks great, man. He shot like a 70 and chugged down a couple of red wines, which he was known to do, a couple of glasses of Cabernet right after the round, and couldn't have been in any better spirit. So, asshole that I am, I call Leonard, who was, already distraught about putting his money up, and he says, "Hey, how you doing?" I said, "Well, I got bad news for you." I said, "I got a guy standing next to me. I put him on the phone that can vouch for the fact that Whitey Ford looks great." He says, "You're an asshole." And he hangs up the phone very angrily. You know how this guy is. You're not inclined to take this kind of ribbing with the usual frivolity that is associated with these sort of jokes. And sure enough, the next day I go out to the driveway. I pick up the Sun Sentinel. That was when papers actually were delivered, in spite of my troubles now with the New York Post, which is 0 for 3 with a walk now on my new subscription. And what's in the headline? Peter Graves dies suddenly at like whatever age he was, some like 70 or something. And so Leonard ends up qualifying, since it's carried over 15 months, for 45 dimes. Now, showing you how difficult it can be to collect on some of these things, the very next day, the guy that was running this particular Deadpool is arrested on a bookmaking charge,
Ow.
having nothing to do with the Deadpool. This was some mafia dragnet thing that they had put together, and he was one of the guys.
Hey,
Now the money was very much, and the payoff was in jeopardy, but he did get his money, I'm happy to report. So that was something else. But yeah, I mean, it just shows you the Deadpool can be very suspect from many
I
different.
mean, the whole thing with Deadpools is it's all about the qualifying rules and how it's selected. Do you get to pick your own guy? Is it a
Yeah,
random pick? But
usually random picks. That's the ones I've been involved in.
biggest one I was involved in is me and a bunch of my buddies have done one, but it has to be somebody related to sports.
Yeah,
And ours is everybody submits 2 names, and then they go into a fishbowl, and so you might get your own name, but you probably won't.
right.
And our one, we had one that, and now it was a pay up front. It wasn't a pay every month deal.
Okay.
Um, but it was you paid once a year, and if nobody had died, it was a rollover. We had one that rolled over for like 7 years in a row,
Wow. What kind of people were you putting on this
and
list?
I thought, again, it was sports people, so
Okay.
whatever. It wasn't that big a pool, so it wasn't that many names.
Could you have submitted Red Shandings like when he was
But
90?
no, ours had an age cap, and it was no known illness.
Okay.
You couldn't, put somebody in with
Sure.
cancer, and I think our age cap at the time was like 70.
Oh, okay. Well, then it's likely that
Um,
it would go on for a while.
and I thought I was going to cash because I had Jerry Tarkanian, and he went into the
Oh, wow.
hospital, and there were all sorts of like Tarkanian has gone in the hospital and he ain't coming out kind of stories. And then like 3 days later, he came out and was like, "Yeah, it turned out it was just heartburn," And I was like, "Oh God, I was going to cash."
Fuck, heartburn.
And
Yeah.
then the same pool, I did. Somebody else won later that year, and we started the same pool. I caught Bobby Knight a couple of years ago,
Wow.
which wasn't my name. It was a random pick. It just happened to be a dude I despised. So it wasn't like I was unhappy
So,
about him checking out, and I ended up hitting on Bobby Knight. So that was a nice hit because number one, you won, and number two, it was Bobby freaking Knight.
Yeah, I mean, it's always more advantageous. Like when I had Tommy Lasorda, unfortunately, somebody hit the pool for me right before he checked out, and so I wasn't able to cash and redraw names. But how could you root for Tommy Lasorda to die? You just can't. What was a somewhat influential figure in my early sports writing days, where I had great admiration for the man, and I was able to attend a couple of those, including the Dave Kingman rant. I happened to be in Lasorda's office when that was taking place. Unforgettable instance, as there was dead silence for a while after the Dodgers had gotten racked by the Cubs. And finally, a guy named Paul Olden chimes up and says, Tommy, what did you think of Kingman's performance tonight? And it was like the Niagara Falls moment there, where you could see steam coming out of his ears. And he says, the rant is classic, of course. What do you fucking think I thought about Kingman's fucking performance tonight? He hit 3 fucking home runs. What do you want from me? It was right up there with Bafakwa couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. I mean, and the dripping sarcasm with which he kept mentioning.
Back when I was a pitcher, I would have sent a limousine to make sure Bavard was at the stadium.
So how can you root for that guy to die? I mean, he had Dodger blue on his heart, right? And was always pretty affable. I mean, some people might have thought he was a little bit of a phony, but he wasn't in my eyes. And so that is the dilemma in being in a Deadpool. You may pick somebody that you actually genuinely enjoy or has some positive impact on your life. You, in the case of Bobby Knight, easy one.
Yeah.
If you had Ben Affleck, I think it would be the only one you were happier about. All right, so that leads us to the big board, which involves a gambling aspect. You were kind of kicking back and thinking, okay, I got a year's worth of action on this thing, and we'll see if I can come away. And you did cash, so that probably put you up a lifetime. But your big board this week, because we've had one obit after another, including Chuck Mangione yesterday. Great.
You know what Luby said? There was somebody new, and I did not know Chuck Mangione had gone out.
Mangione, 84. He brought a lot of joy to people. His music tended to make you happy.
No longer feels so good.
Yeah, he's not feeling so good right now. How's Chuck doing? He's not doing so good. Won't be seeing Chuck around here.
That was his big hit, right? Feels so good.
Feels so good, yeah. I mean, it was a tune that you'll never forget. It was one of those catchy ones that made you. I mean, as corny as "Don't Worry, Be Happy" was, it usually made you have a smile on your face until you heard it for the 100th time that same day, played by the local radio stations. But inspired by the idea that there have been a lot of obits. Hulk Hogan, of course, checked out, varying opinions.
Right? Again, the whole theme of this week was guys that people have like this very deep connection to, particularly people my age have these very deep emotional connections to that. I got to be honest, I was never, again, I was surprised at the number of people like in my social group who had like this very, heartfelt connection to Malcolm Jamal Warner because of his, youth on the Cosby Show. I was never really a Cosby Show guy. I was more into like Cheers and Night Court in that famous NBC Thursday night lineup than I was the Cosby Show. I always thought the Cosby Show was kind of corny, but like a lot of people, very attached to that show still emotionally. And Hulk Hogan, another one. Again, I think we've all kind of realized as he's gotten older that he's kind of a bag of crap. Had the incident.
Scumbag has been applied.
Yeah, like they had the incident where with the racist rant that got caught on tape, and the above of the love sponge, the sex tape thing, the bizarre reality show where let's just say his relationship with his daughter was not exactly conventional. And then his son ended up like killing somebody or paralyzing somebody in a drunk driving accident. But people still, from their core felt it that, that we're going to, say your prayers and eat your vitamins and love America, brother. We're very into Hulk. Again, I wasn't into Hulk Hogan when I was a kid. I was more of like a Ric Flair or Macho Man Savage guy than I was a Hulk Hogan guy. But a lot of people felt these deep connections. I was kind of removed from it. But it's been a bad week and down here, I felt the Roy Black one was very underrated. It didn't get a lot of publicity in the slew of celebrity deaths.
Famous criminal attorney.
If you were a coke dealer in Miami in the 1980s,
you loved this.
You could afford him. he was like the biggest celebrity on earth. Like if you were, charged of a serious crime in South Florida, he's bigger than Tom Cruise.
He was very effective where others weren't in a lot of different cases.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's the theme of this week's big board is Deadpools and celebrity deaths, and we went with.
All right, here we
Hold
go.
on 1 second here as I pull it up. Hold on, I gotta reset here.
All right.
Cha-cha. That was our big board this week. Is the big board of sports Deadpool picks for 2025 and beyond.
These were names that you would submit and hope to grab out of that fishbowl that you're picking from.
I feel like there's some very solid picks here. That there's a pretty good chance.
Yeah.
It might not be around for very long.
All right, let's get to the list.
Let's go with, and we're going to start with number 5 with college football season starting. There's a reasonable chance some Alabama fan is going to shoot Kalen DeBoer before the end of the year.
It's very possible, isn't it? What, tough schedule?
Yeah, you look at their depth charts and some of their games, there's a pretty good chance Alabama's going to hang another 3 losses and miss the playoffs again. And if that's the case, it's Alabama. They're not trying to fire you. They're trying to fire at you with their rifle or shotgun. So if I'm Kalen DeBoer, I'm hiring a lot of security, both at the stadium and probably at my home if they miss the playoffs again this year.
Read the fine print, though. If you're in that pool, the parenthetical would be must be by somewhat natural causes. This would be, I mean,
it's
like
Alabama.
Yeah.
It's Alabama. Death by bullet is fairly natural cause if you're you're trying to follow up Nick Saban there.
Imagine this, following in Nick Saban's footsteps and having the modest results by Alabama standards that Saban had established. And who's this cat from Washington? I could see where some irate hillbilly cranked up on moonshine might get an inclination to do that. So a long shot for a younger man by the standards of normal Deadpool criteria, but certainly a very viable candidate at number 5. Number 4.
I mean, again, you say it would be a bit unusual, but is it really? Because we see like 3 stories a year out of Alabama where some father and son get in a gunfight over the Tide game, and one of them winds up dead. So I would say, by human standards, it's unusual. By Crimson Tide standards, really not that particularly unusual. Kind of routine, actually.
Not impossible to envision. All right, Caleb DeBoer is number 5 on the list of possible Deadpool candidates for 2025. Number 4.
Number 4, and let's be honest, this is not the happiest or healthiest guy in terms of appearance anyway, but it's Adam Silver, because it turns out every guy who's not on a max contract in his league is apparently point shaving. I don't know how closely you followed this Malik Beasley story, and Terry Rozier is going on down here. And I can't speak to it in terms of, actual plays and stat lines for the players themselves. But if you look at these betting patterns, it certainly seems like something's going on. So, if you're Adam Silver and you got to deal with this, not just with the current batch, but it's almost certainly going on somewhere else, it's going to be a long few years before you manage to clean this out of the NBA. That bottle of sleeping pills might be calling to you tonight.
And besides the fact that from an appearance standpoint, he looks like he's been dead for 12 years anyway.
Right?
Is this guy ever happy? I mean, he was happy when he kicked Donald Sterling out of the league, but other than that, and he has that look of a guy that, sad to say, has been experiencing, he's been on the chemo diet or something.
It certainly looks that way. That, or he's, the 100 and whatever year old version of Dracula in the Gary Oldman movie. Like, again, he's not a healthy looking individual to begin with, and I feel like what we've seen over the last year with Rozier and Beasley could just be the tip of the iceberg.
It could just push him to his grave. All right, that's number 4. Adam Silver on the list of the Deadpool candidates for 2025 from the sporting world. Number 3.
Number 3. Jake Paul is just determined to get himself killed in the ring. We talked about this, Defo. I don't know if you've looked at the list of guys who are supposedly like top candidate for his next fight. But again, they just ran the article. Was it the Post? Somewhere, a fairly major source. So I assume they weren't just making this up in thin air. Now it could be BS coming out of Paul's camp. But supposedly the top two candidates for his next fight, right at the moment, or at least as of yesterday, are Deontay Wilder and Anthony Joshua. Who, I mean, forget that they're both relatively, not, still relatively still active compared to the guys he's been fighting. I mean,
Yeah.
Wilder had a fight, I think, just a year
Just fought,
ago.
yes. No,
And,
more recently than that.
okay, and Joshua, I think, has been within the last 18 months or something. They're
Yeah.
both too big for him to start with.
One shot would concuss this guy, and he may never recover, which is,
Again,
I think,
legitimate punchers too.
yeah.
So,
The
like,
round right from Wilder that knocked out or knocked down Tyson Fury when he miraculously got back up and fought to a draw the first time they met. If that lands on Jake Paul anywhere, I don't care where it is, even on his chest, he's going out on a stretcher and
yeah,
maybe, unfortunately, in a body bag.
again, now I know there's a third scenario where I think it's the cruiserweight or the super middleweight champion maybe wants to fight him to get a big payday.
Yeah.
That, I guess, at least size wise would make more sense than getting, into the ring with one of these guys who's like a legitimate, super heavyweight type. But if he gets in the ring with Wilder or Anthony Joshua, I don't think that's going to turn out well for anybody involved.
No. More likely to fight RuPaul than either of those two guys, Jake Paul. Unbelievable. Somehow this becomes the conversation, and then he ends up fighting some stiff. And you also have to, when you're betting this stuff, I mean, take into account what seems to be a leaked consideration that he's got these clauses where the guy's not allowed to throw a punch, which we saw in evidence with Tyson, who didn't throw anything after the first round.
I mean, again, in Tyson's case, I feel like Tyson.
He just was out of gas.
It was just age in his legs. I mean, look, we all saw the video clips of Tyson working the heavy bag
Sure.
for like 45 seconds or whatever. Like, oh, Mike still got it. And then,
Right.
we forgot about, age and legs. That's not the case with like a Wilder or a Joshua.
No. They would cream this guy. It would be ugly. So yeah, he would be a likely candidate. I mean, you would hate to see anything that seems to be just for the purposes of him making money and the other fighter and entertainment end in tragedy like that. But yeah, I think if he takes on these kind of challenges, certainly worthy of being number 3 on this list. Number two,
got a big event coming in the Ryder Cup. It's hot up in Bethpage Black. Would hate to see Scotty Scheffler get so dehydrated from crying like a little girl that a tragedy happens.
Yeah,
but seems
You're not
like
a big
there's a
Scheffler
reasonable
fan.
chance on it, given it his behavior in the last Ryder Cup. So, just saying, it's a possibility.
But you don't view him in a very favorable light. I mean, your assertion is that Scotty Scheffler, as much adulation as he gets, literally Jim Nance has an orgasm every time he mentions his name, and then
I
goes
thought
up.
about putting Jim Nance here, masturbating himself to death if Scheffler to win the
Loses the cup. Yeah.
the next Masters. But no, let's go the other way. Like it's the whole Tom Hanks from a League of. There's no crying in sports.
Yeah.
You don't get to just sit there and cry like a little girl on the sidelines because you lost. And it wasn't like if your match you were getting your ass kicked the whole Ryder Cup anyway. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like your match was the deciding factor, Scotty.
I think with his recent success, he's probably become a little bit more detached than he was at that time at the Ryder Cup. But nonetheless, if he starts crying, it's always hot and humid out there. Bethpage Black, not an easy course to walk. I guess none of them are on the pro circuit, but this one's particularly arduous. He could dehydrate to the point where he just passed out and maybe never recovered. So definitely worth taking. I mean, you'd be happy if you drew him under these circumstances. All right.
And unlike after tournaments where he doesn't want to take any tough questions about dragging a cop behind your car.
Right.
He can't use his kid as a human shield in this one. I mean, that's his go-to move. You saw it again at the British Open where, he was afraid the reporter may say, look, I got my kid. I can't talk to you right now. He uses his child as a human shield more than Hamas does.
Oh, Jesus. All right, that's number 2. Number 1 on the list.
Number one, and it gets back to those college football futures because I was talking about it with Luby, and he was like, "What's this roster look like?"
Yeah.
And I really didn't know, so I went and did the research last night. But it's going to be a long year in Chapel Hill, and there's some expectations for reasons I don't entirely understand because the season total on North Carolina is 7.5. Coming off a 6-6 season last year. Now they do return most of their defensive backfield and linebacker core, but they have all new starters on both the offensive and defensive lines. And I don't care how much talent you recruit in the transfer portal. If you have an all new offensive line, no matter the talent level, that's not a good situation.
No.
Legitimately, it could be a disaster in Chapel Hill, and a fairly competitive representative schedule. It happens everywhere. As Jim Jeffries, the comedian, likes to say, we all get a little sad sometimes. It could be a long year for old Bill, and let's be honest, given the girlfriend's nature, who long knows how long she's going to hang around if Bill hangs like a 3-8 season.
Plus, he has to be gargling with Viagra to keep pace with this 24-year-old, so that can't be especially favorable for his heart if it starts to break during the realization that North Carolina is going to suck.
Again, this is another one. We're starting to get into futures next week.
Yeah.
But this is definitely a total look at would be taking the under on 7.5 for the University of North. Basically, if you aren't taking the under, if you're taking the over, like you're really hoping for a coaching miracle here because roster-wise, this looks like a 4 or 5 win team to me.
Wow. Okay. So we actually touched on some of that college future stuff as you're not favorable about Alabama necessarily. I don't know what their total is. And North Carolina, you think?
I did not research the Alabama total. We'll have to look more closely at it. But that's probably an under 2 would be my guess.
All right. And you made an allusion to the idea that Michigan might be good for an over, especially if Sharon Moore is full of crap. And Underwood is actually very good and was a cinch to be a starter all along.
Yeah, we started like we did last year looking at the Heisman, and I'm not sure that there's a good angle for this particular Heisman. But looking a little bit at the totals, I think we'll definitely find some more favorable here. We'll talk about that next week, and we'll probably have a big board that actually involves sports instead of because we do have the preseason kicking off next week.
I think well entrenched in the sporting world here, and well worth exploring, Professor. All right, always a pleasure, my friend. Thanks so much for being with us.
You have
The Professor, ladies and gentlemen. We caught him choking there at the end, but he certainly didn't choke when it came to the material on the big board. We're out of time, man. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll do it again on Monday. Mike Jones will be with us. Mike hit on his Baltimore game yesterday. I don't remember exactly what his other picks were. I probably wrote them down somewhere, but so at least early in the day, he was 1 for 1. And the Tigers, wow, in a desperate tailspin. This was the best team in baseball not that long ago. Now I've lost 10 out of 11 and still maintain. It was so far out there throughout most of the season, first half, that they still maintain an 8-game advantage over the Cleveland Guardians, who are trying to chase them while in second place in the AL Central. So we'll see if they hold up. But wow, an ugly trend and got buried yesterday. It was ugly all the way around. Yu Darvish looks like he's finished also. All right, thanks so much for being with us. Always a pleasure. We'll see you Monday. We'll peel ourselves off the mat on the next edition of Bury Your Bookie.